We are really glad you've joined us for this phase 3 of the Spiritual Pathways study. This phase is going to look a little different than the previous two, and our goal in this phase of study is to help each of us be able to better understand the Bible and apply it in context. So if you think for a minute about any story you've read in life, maybe think of Charlotte's Web. If you read the story about Wilbur the pig and Charlotte the spider, the author wrote that story with a certain intent, and you could change it to mean something different or apply it in a certain way in a different situation, but that would not ever alter the author's intent of the story. And the same is true with the Bible. Dr. Howard Hendricks is known for reminding us that the Bible was written for us, not to us. As you look through the Bible, each book has an author. It has an audience that the book was written to. It was written at a certain time period. So when you think about the culture or even the time in history, there are things that are different than if it were written in today, in the here and now. We can have all sorts of ideas when we read something in the Bible about what it might mean or what it might say, but what we're gonna work on today is learning a 3-step process to studying scripture in context. Our pastor is always telling us, don't take my word for it, check me on it. And the ultimate checkpoint is scripture, so that when we study, we check it back with scripture. So I want you to, in your guides, write down 3 words today. The first word is observation. The second word is interpretation. And the third word is application. At its simplest method, studying the Bible employs these 3 techniques. Observation is simply, what does this passage say? Not what does it say, and I'm interpreting it to mean something else. Just simply, what does it say? Like, what is the data? Interpretation, what does this passage mean? And not what does it mean to me, but what was the author's intended meaning? And the third, application, what does this passage mean to me, and what changes do I need to make? Again, seeing ourselves as part of God's big story. So our goals are to observe, interpret, and apply. And those 3 things together are what leads to transformation through life with Christ. So as we get started, we're going to take a little practice session in a unique way. In your booklets, you're going to see a picture or a copy of a painting. And this painting does not have a title. It doesn't have any other information. And if for some reason you see the painting and you've seen it before and you know what it is, don't share any of the details with anybody. For now, we want you just simply to look at the painting. So we're going to take a minute in the room you're in. You can, for a small group, you can share together, or you can split up into groups of 2 or 3. We want you to take a few minutes, open your booklet, look at the painting, and I'd like you to look at simply, what do you observe? This is a famous painting from long ago, and it is reflective of its time in history. So you may see some things in here that remind you of other things, but it's reflective to that time in history. But we want you to start by observing only. It sounds easy, but you're going to quickly find yourself noticing things and then trying to make assessments or draw conclusions. And I'll give a spoiler alert. Some people say the dog looks sad because his head is resting on the shoulder or on the knee of the young man. That is an interpretation. You're making an assessment or telling a story. So simply just note the dog's head is on the boy's knee. So I want you to go ahead and hit pause on the video so that you can focus in on what you're observing only in the picture. All right, I would love to be in the room with you and hear what observations everybody made. And if you can believe it or not, about 300 observations have been made from this painting alone. There's lots of schools of thought out there on it, and a lot of them could be good and a lot of them could make sense, but there's only one right answer because the painter had an intent in mind. But now we're going to take what you have learned or what you have observed, and we're going to put that into work in observing and then interpreting what you observed. So as a large group, I want you to start guessing what you think this painting is about. So once we hit pause, you're going to start using all of those things you listed as observations and start making guesses about what this painting is about. In some ways, we can do the same thing with the Bible. We can read a verse or a series of verses and just pluck it out of scripture and make it mean something that it doesn't. It's so important to read those verses within the whole chapter or the whole book, depending on the author's writing style. So take a moment, hit pause, and I want you to share with your groups what interpretations you made of the observations from the painting. Okay, the last thing that we'll do is give you a chance to take your observations and your interpretations and make an application. We want each group to take a guess at what the title of this painting would be. So take a minute, think through what your guesses would be, and make a list of those titles. All right, so do you think your title was the right one? This is where it's really hard to be on this side because we love to be in the room and hear what everybody has to say. But using everything that you observed, all the interpretations you made of those observations, you all made guesses as to what the title of this painting would be. So before I give you the answer, I'm going to read a little bit about this painting for you. The painter writes, "I once did a cover showing a father seeing his son off to college. That year, my 3 boys had gone away and I'd had an empty feeling. It took me a while to adjust without them. This poignancy was what I wanted to get across in the picture. But there was humor in it too. I put a funny kind of suit on the boy because he was a ranch boy leaving home for the first time. And his father was holding 2 hats. One was the boy's beat up old rancher's hat, and the other was his brand new go-to-town hat. The boy was carrying a lunchbox all done up in pink ribbon. I drew a collie dog with his head on the boy's lap. I got most of my fan letters about the dog, believe it or not. You see, the father couldn't show how he felt about the boys leaving, so the dog did." Written by the painter Norman Rockwell in 1960, and he named this painting "Breaking Home Ties." The article goes on to say, placing second after saying grace in a Saturday Evening Post readers' popularity poll, Breaking Home Ties has always held the admiration of the general public. But art critics have chided Rockwell's painting for its sentimentality and having to draw their judgment based on so much emotion coming from a painting at a time that was unheard of. In 2006, an amazing discovery was made when the painting, believed to be the original, was identified as a replica. The original painting was found behind a secret wall in the home of the painting's owner, the deceased artist, Don Trakte of Arlington, Vermont. So I want you to think about this for a minute. All that time, what was thought to be as the real painting was actually the replica. And so often we can do that with the Bible. We can take parts of it and present it as fact, but when we put it all together with the author, the intent, the culture, and the context, we're able to get the accurate picture of what the author was intending to get across. So as we close out our session for today, I want you to take some time as a group to think through these questions. How did you do based on the feedback you gave for the painting? What did you miss? Did you focus too much on certain areas that weren't crucial to understanding the painting? For me, it was that red cloth. That took up a lot of my time and it had no meaning to the painting at all. Is there anything that you left out that was important? All of these will apply to how we study scripture over the next couple sessions, learning to observe, interpret, and then apply in context so that we can get a true picture of who God is and how much He loves us.